After Queen Elizabeth I passed away, her closest advisors began searching through her personal belongings. They found a velvet box containing a sealed letter. As they opened it, chills ran down their spines. What was written in that letter that held such shocking power? Was it a confession? A warning? Or the key to a secret that England had kept hidden for centuries? To find the answer, we must go back to the beginning. Elizabeth was born in the year 1533, but her arrival was anything but ordinary. She was at the heart of the greatest royal scandal of the century. Her mother, Anne Boleyn, the woman who shattered a king's marriage and divided a kingdom. Her father, none other than Henry VIII, the monarch who broke with Catherine of Aragon to make Anne his queen. This act triggered not just a personal crisis, but a religious revolution, the English Reformation. Churches split, loyalties shifted, all because of Elizabeth's mother. But the fairy tale ended quickly. Just 3 years after Elizabeth's birth, Anne Boleyn fell out of favor. On false charges of adultery and treason, she was sentenced to death. On May 19, 1536, she was beheaded on Tower Green. Elizabeth was just 2 years old. In a single moment, she lost her mother and her royal status. The little girl left behind would grow up in the shadow of blood, intrigue, and betrayal, a past that would haunt her for the rest of her life. From the moment Elizabeth lost her mother, her life was steeped in uncertainty. Once a princess, she was now branded illegitimate by her own father and pushed to the fringes of the royal court. She drifted between royal households, treated not as a daughter of the king, but as a living reminder of a scandal he'd rather forget. She watched in silence as her father, King Henry VIII, married again, and again, and again. Each new queen brought a wave of instability and danger. Elizabeth learned quickly. Loyalty could vanish overnight, and heads could roll just as fast. But everything changed in 1537. Henry's third wife, Jane Seymour, gave birth to a long-awaited son, Edward. Suddenly, Elizabeth's role diminished even further. Edward wasn't just a baby. He was the living embodiment of everything her mother had died for. At court, Elizabeth kept her eyes open and her mouth shut. She watched stepmothers fall, allies turn, and nobles disappear. The palace was no fairy tale. It was a battlefield draped in silk. And amid the power plays, betrayals, and executions, young Elizabeth learned a chilling truth. In the Tudor court, love was a weapon, and survival demanded absolute silence. In 1562, death came knocking, but it didn't take her. At just 29 years old, Queen Elizabeth was struck by smallpox, one of the deadliest diseases of the era. She survived, but not without scars. The once radiant face that charmed nobles and terrified rivals was now pockmarked and pale. Her hair thinned, and behind the royal mask, something had changed forever. For a queen whose image was power, the damage was devastating. But Elizabeth would not be seen as weak. She crafted a new face, literally. Thick, ghostly layers of Venetian ceruse, a cosmetic made from white lead and vinegar, became her daily armor. It masked the scars, but at a deadly cost. The lead seeped into her skin, into her blood, and silently poisoned her over the years. And that wasn't all. To add color to her lips, she used pastes laced with mercury. Some say her makeup remover also contained it. With every application, she was slowly corroding her body from the outside in. Decades of toxic cosmetics left her hollowed, fragile, and sickly. But still, she painted her mask. And in the end, it may not have been illness or age that killed Elizabeth, but beauty itself. As the years passed, the Virgin Queen's strength began to fade. By the early 1600s, her once commanding presence gave way to something quieter, more fragile. She grew thin, withdrawn, and silent. Her mind, once razor-sharp, now wandered. But it wasn't just age. One by one, those closest to her vanished. Friends she had trusted, companions she had cherished, gone. But one loss struck deeper than all the rest. Robert Devereux, Earl of Essex, once her favorite, her flame, her undoing. He had defied her, betrayed her, and she had signed his death warrant. She never recovered from it. In her final months, Elizabeth refused all medical care. No doctors, no examinations. She sat in silence, hours on end, staring into nothing. But the most haunting detail, she refused to lie down. For 15 hours she stood, exhausted, draped in robes, surrounded by pillows, because she believed one thing: if I lie down, I will never rise again. And she was right. On March 24, 1603, Elizabeth I died on her feet, with dignity intact, but a heart burdened by ghosts, regrets, and the weight of a crown. The last Tudor had fallen, not by sword or sickness, but by sorrow. In the days following Queen Elizabeth I's death, her private chambers were carefully searched. Every scroll, every trinket, every sealed drawer. But amidst the royal chaos, one item was quietly reported missing: a small, oval portrait from her private collection. It was no ordinary painting. Court whispers claimed it showed two women, one unmistakably Anne Boleyn, the other a child. Not Elizabeth, but someone else. Servants swore they'd seen it on her desk in the days before she died, a piece she guarded fiercely, locking it away whenever strangers entered. No records of the artist, no official documentation, and now, no painting. Theories spread like wildfire. Had Elizabeth carried a secret to her grave? A child born in secrecy, hidden to preserve her throne, and her image as the untouchable Virgin Queen? Or was the child merely symbolic, a visual representation of an heir she never dared name? The truth remains as hidden as the painting itself. But for a monarch who built her legend on control, the disappearance of a single portrait may be the loudest secret she never spoke, and someone made sure the world would never see it. They called her the Virgin Queen, but behind palace doors, Elizabeth's heart was far from untouched. Her first and perhaps deepest bond was with Robert Dudley, her childhood friend, her closest companion. He was married, yet the Queen granted him access to her bedchamber at any hour. Their closeness stirred scandal across Europe, and when Dudley's wife died under mysterious circumstances, the whispers grew darker. Still, Elizabeth never married him. Why? Then came Francois, Duke of Anjou, younger, foreign, and politically convenient. She nicknamed him her frog and even exchanged rings in public. But just as quickly as she opened the door, she slammed it shut. The engagement was broken. The court was stunned. And finally, Robert Devereux, the Earl of Essex. Dashing, reckless, dangerously young. Their passion burned hot and fast, until he defied her one too many times. She had him executed. But they say she never forgave herself. For Elizabeth, love was never simple. Every suitor brought not just affection, but threat, of invasion, of betrayal, of loss of control. She danced on a tightrope of desire and duty, torn between personal longing and the stability of a fragile empire. In the end, she chose the crown, and let love become her ghost. Buried deep within the royal archives, long forgotten by history, lay a single parchment, worn, ink-faded, and sealed with the insignia of Queen Elizabeth's inner circle. Scholars now believe it was penned by none other than John Dee, the Queen's trusted advisor and court magician. It was not a letter, it was a prophecy. The Virgin shall bear the fate of a kingdom, but leave no seed behind. England shall rest upon her shadow, and her shadow alone. A chilling line, one that echoed across Elizabeth's life. Dee was no ordinary scholar. He dabbled in astrology, alchemy, and the arcane, and Elizabeth trusted him. Some say she did more than read the prophecy. She believed it, lived by it. What if her refusal to marry, to bear children, to name an heir, wasn't politics? What if it was destiny? To her enemies, she was an unnatural woman. To her people, a divine ruler. But to those who knew of the prophecy, she was something else entirely. Did she see herself as chosen, cursed, or simply bound to an ancient fate she dared not escape? No one knows for certain. But if the prophecy was real, Elizabeth didn't die childless. She died fulfilled. In a world where queens were expected to marry and produce heirs, Elizabeth made a radical choice. She did neither. But her refusal wasn't weakness. It was strategy. From the moment she took the throne, suitors lined up. Kings, princes, dukes from across Europe, each offering alliances, wealth, and power. But Elizabeth turned courtship into a weapon. With every flirtation, she gained political leverage. With every delay, she kept enemies guessing. To Spain, she hinted at unity through marriage. To France, she offered hope of alliance. And to her own council, she dangled the illusion of a future heir. But deep down, Elizabeth knew, the moment she married, she would surrender control. A husband would not be a partner. He would be a rival, perhaps even a ruler. So she played the game better than any man. She declared herself married to England. The crown became her only companion, the throne her only heir. But with this power came a cost. No successor meant uncertainty. No child meant the end of a dynasty. Elizabeth ruled for 45 years, alone, unbending, unmatched. And as the world watched, she proved a stunning truth. A woman without a husband could rule an empire and shape history forever. He was her last great favorite, young, handsome, dangerously bold. Robert Devereux, Earl of Essex, was more than just a courtier. To Elizabeth, he was fire, unpredictable, intoxicating, and impossible to control. But ambition consumed him. In 1601, Essex led a reckless rebellion, storming London in a desperate bid for power. He believed the people would rise for him. They didn't. Within hours, the coup collapsed. Essex was arrested and tried for treason. Elizabeth faced the unthinkable. To maintain the crown, she had to sentence the man she once adored to death. On February 25, 1601, Essex was beheaded. Witnesses say she signed the death warrant in silence, but her grief was deafening behind closed doors. "I can forgive what was done to me," she whispered, "but not what was done to England." The execution shattered her. She withdrew from court, rarely smiled, and spoke often of shadows and ghosts. She sat for hours in the dark, remembering, regretting. Some say she kept a lock of his hair until her dying day. In Essex, she saw both love and betrayal, and in his death, she lost the last piece of her heart. What remained was a queen with a crown, but no one left to share it with. On March 24, 1603, the sun set on one of the most legendary reigns in English history. Queen Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen, Gloriana, the last Tudor, drew her final breath at Richmond Palace. She left no heir, no child to carry her name, no son or daughter to inherit her crown. For the first time in over a century, the Tudor dynasty had no rightful successor. But behind the scenes, her advisors moved quickly. In secret meetings, they turned their eyes north, toward Scotland, toward King James VI, son of Mary, Queen of Scots, a distant relative, but the closest living claimant. And just like that, with a single signature, the throne passed from one era to the next. James VI of Scotland became James I of England. 2 crowns, 1 king. With Elizabeth's death, the Tudor line ended, but a new chapter began. The Stuart dynasty. A union of kingdoms, a shift in power, and a future she never saw. Elizabeth ruled alone. She died alone. But in her solitude, she forged a legacy that kings could only dream of. One built not on bloodlines, but on brilliance. And though the Tudor name vanished, her legend never did. And now, we return to where it all began. After Queen Elizabeth III died, her advisors found a single, sealed letter among her most private belongings. It bore no address, no date, just her personal crest, and a final message meant for no one, or for everyone. The contents have never been made public, but rumors have never stopped. Some say the letter named a secret heir, someone Elizabeth protected in silence, whose identity was erased to preserve the Virgin Queen myth. Others whisper it contained a confession, that her beauty was not a gift, but a slow and deliberate death brought on by years of lead and mercury. And then, There are those who believe the letter held something far more dangerous, the truth about her enemies, the betrayal she never voiced, or a prophecy meant to be read only after her passing. Why did she hide it? Why was it never released?